All right, guys and gals, we're back at it with more Run 8, and today we're going to be taking a train north from Waycross to Fitzgerald this time. We're going to cover the other end of the sub that we have yet to see. So, yeah, we're down at Rice Yard, CSX's Rice Yard in Waycross. Absolutely massive yard. It's huge, right? It's huge in real life. It's huge in game. Of course, the yard's not populated right now. I haven't had a chance to put any cars in there, so it's just our train that we're going to be taking north. But we are going to be taking the Q544. This is Waycross to Cincinnati service, as it was in 2002. So we do have some nice old school power. We're going to walk down here and line this switch real quick. So we're in the north forwarding yard, and we're going to head north out of here. So we got that switch. Let's go ahead and get him rolling. Knock the independent off. We'll just swing up when he comes by. Yeah, massive yard. It's just mind-boggling how big this yard is. Like I said, real life and in game. In game's got a 60-track bowl, just like the real thing. I think, what, 12, maybe 10 or 12 track north forwarding. I can't remember. Maybe 12 track receiving yard. What, 4 to 6 tracks on the south forwarding. I can't remember the numbers, but either way, you guys get the picture. Like, it is a huge, huge yard. I did get to work down here a few times when I was cubbing. Basically what we did, all right, cubbing means, like, if you're not familiar with it, when you hire out with the railroad, at least nowadays, I don't know how it is currently, but when I hired out in the early 2000s, you basically went through some training, and then they put you on your subdivision or whatever terminal you're going to work out of, and then you cub for about 6 weeks. I think we cubbed for 6 weeks, basically learning the route, right? Learning all the routes and territory. Cubbing for us included going down to Waycross. So I went down to Waycross on a train. I cubbed the route, the Fitzgerald sub, and then I stayed in Waycross for 3 days and worked with the hostlers. They had a hostler job down here. And I worked with them for 3 days, just basically trying to learn the yard. Like, it's so big. There's no way you could learn all this in 3 days. Like, there's really just no way. You're basically just learning the ins and outs. But I did work with the hostlers down here for 3 days. Absolutely loved it. That was a blast. That's one of, like, the better times I had on the railroad. I really enjoyed that, and the guys that I worked with. It was a really good job, too. So, I worked with a hostler for 3 days and then went back north on a train out of here. So my knowledge of the yard is very, very limited. For us, we basically just took trains and yarded them in the receiving yard and took them out of the north forwarding. So things that I remember about leaving Waycross. Well, one, I've heard a lot of guys talk about having to get power in the shop and take it to your train. That was a common thing back then, as far as I could tell. As far as I can remember, that was pretty common. Though I never had to do that. I guess I was lucky. I never had to take power to my train. All the trains I took out of there already had the power on it. So I just get on the train and go, right? Like, you go on duty at A Tower and you'd get on your train and go. But some guys did have to get power and take it out to their train. So you go to the shop, start feathering the brake a little bit here so we can get stopped to get this switch. Yeah, you get the power and take it to your train and couple up and go. You know, the opposite was the same as well. Like, if you yarded your train a lot of times, and I did have to do this several times, like, this was very common. But having to cut your power off and take it to the house or take it to the shop, like, that was really common as well too. So let's grab this switch here and we should be good to go. Let's get auto going as well too. There we go. We're going to use auto for a minute, but we're going to have to turn them off too. Well, I'll explain in a minute. As we get further into it, I'll explain. But yeah, yarding your train, take the power off, and take it to the house. That was very common. I did have to do that. The other thing about the yard, we'll see it in just a second here, is the Thomasville main. Let's swing up on this guy real quick here. There we go. All right, nice. All right, let's give it some power. Start getting out of here. You see the Thomasville main over there on the left, the far left is coming in. We're fixing to have to cross over that, right? We'll have to cross over the Thomasville main. And basically what they would do, let's say we loaded up on our train in North Forwarding Yard. We're ready to go. We call A Tower, say we're loaded up and ready to go in 544. They'd give you your routing instructions, or they would line you or whatever. And then I'm trying to remember, then they would say something like, you've got the Thomasville main, and I think they would give you time. So you got the Thomasville main at 0730 or something like that. It was very informal, I guess you could say. Now, the Thomasville sub, you guys know, of course, if you're familiar with it, is a DTC route back then, a block route. There's a little stretch of CTC over at West Waycross, right? But for the most part, from there on, it's DTC. And then you've got the stretch between like West Waycross and East Waycross. It's kind of like DTC, but they didn't treat it like DTC, really. Like it was very relaxed. They would just tell you had the main. And they wouldn't issue it like in the form of a DTC block. So they would just give you the main, and you would do your thing and get out of town. And as soon as you got out of here, and as soon as you cleared it, your back end of your train or the bottom of your train cleared it, you would call the A Tower and give it back. And that was basically it. So you can see it's coming in over here on the left. That's the left track. It's Thomasville main. We're fixing to cross it in a little bit as soon as we get down here. It takes a hot minute to get out of the yard. Getting out of the yard was a bit of a process, right? It really just is. Let's see. We're going to have to dial him up for a signal, too. Let's do channel 14. Never remember doing this in real life. Usually, if A Tower told you to go, then they had already coordinated with the dispatcher and you were good to go. Like, you were ready to go, but request a signal here. We should have a lights. What does he say? Proceed on signal indication. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll keep easing down there. Now what we're going to have to do as we get closer is we're going to have to turn auto off. Let's look at it real fast. Yeah, he's got us going through town, right? You see we're going through town here. Through Lang, but we're going through town across Plant Avenue. While never say never, you know, anything can happen on the railroad. I never took a train out that way. Now, they do it in game for AI purposes. Like, it works out better doing it that way. Having them leave through town, have them come in the back way. Real life, we always went out the back way. We always went out the freight lead. I don't ever remember going out through town. It was always the freight lead. But for AI purposes, it's done the other way. So what we're going to have to do is disengage auto for a bit. Go back, and we're going to have to knock some of these signals down. So we'll knock that one down. We'll get East Waycross, Plant Avenue. There we go. And we'll grab this one. Line him there. We'll get this switch. Alright, it's running time. We'll have to wait a minute. And let's see. I think we have to get that switch too. We'll see. Alright, let's go ahead and get this. Alright, we should be lined through to the back way. We should be going the back way now. So we're just going to kind of sit on this for a minute and get established on that route, and then we'll re-engage auto. I don't want to re-engage him right now because he'll just line us back the other way. Like, he'll take that down and put us back the other way. We don't want to do that. All right, there you go. There you see the Thomasville main on the left. Be all your receiving yard tracks and stuff like that on the right. I said, we'll populate the yard one day. We'll do more. Like, honestly, you could do a whole episode just in the yard. You could totally do an episode just in the yard. You know, working a hump job, hostling engines, switching, trimming, you know, whatever. You could literally do a whole episode just about the yard. But we'll save that for another day. Let's see. Let's look and see what we got. We look like we're lined okay here. I think we are. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, it's a little bit of a process to get out of here. Get our train stats up real quick. Double check that. 5,700, almost 5,800 feet. 1.9 HPT, which is pretty good. That's not bad. 5,500 tons, 29 loads, 63 empties. That's pretty, yeah, this is a very average train for back then. It really just is. Very typical train. There's a little bit of a tonnage, a difference in the tonnage flow, like south versus north. Like to me, your northbound trains were always a little bit lighter. They didn't seem to be quite as heavy. They didn't need as much power as the southbound trains did. So, you know, not as much tonnage coming out of Florida, right? That's what that basically boils down to, is make sure we're lying there. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, not as much tonnage going north out of Florida as there is coming south. There's a little bit of a difference. Not a lot. But definitely a little bit of a difference. Alright, so now we're getting ready to cross the Thomasville Main. We're getting on Thomasville Main now. And then down here in Nickel Street. I think that was Nickel Street. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Nickel Street. That's where we'll go to the Fitz. The back way or the freight lead. Yeah, so like I said, I always went the back way. Never say never. There could be guys that were taken out through town. You know, I'm not saying that never happened. I really don't know, but from my experience, we always went out the back lead. So coming in was a different story. Yarding your train was a different story. Like, I went the back way. Yarding my train a lot, predominantly went that way. But you could go through town, through Plant Avenue that way. And the one thing that you knew, if you were lying through town, if you were on a southbound freight, let's say a 647, and they took you through town, you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt you were going to back into the yard. That was a thing. That was absolutely a thing. Probably not so much now because the trains are so dang big. Like, they can't fit multiple trains in the yard track anymore in the receiving yard. But back then, you know, 5,000 feet of train, you know, 4,000 feet of train, you're guaranteed, like, you're going to back in on top of something. So they would take you through town. So, and a lot of times, I'm trying to think. One time for sure, I remember when I backed in, I don't remember them giving us a heads up. All right, we got a slow approach at Nickel Street on the freight lead. So slow approach is the best we could get. Like, there's nothing, you know, nothing better than that. There's not like there's a slow approach slow or anything like that. So we're just getting a slow approach. So I have to go around Lang looking out. But yeah, I don't remember. When they took us through town, I don't remember them giving us a heads up. I just remember going down there and being like, oh, we're going through town. Then it was the first time I ever did that, and I think the engineer was like, yeah, we're fixing the back end. You know, but they didn't give us a heads up or anything like that. All right, let's go ahead and get some bell action going here. The thing about the old school engines, you have to actuate the bell by yourself, right? Like, manually. A little horn action here, not too much. So many trains coming in and out of here every day. People had to get tired of it. I imagine they did. I bet it got old. Waycross was a busy yard. All right, track over on the right. It's going to be, I think that was the 97 lead or something like that. 97 routes. Never did anything with that. I think that thing was like, I think back then it was barely in service. If it was in service at all. I'm trying to remember if it was spiked or not. I think they used it, but I never did anything with it, and I don't ever remember hearing them do anything with that either. So have a spur track or something. Like, no trains took that back then. Yeah, got a lot of crossings on the back way here. It's pretty much slow going all the way to Lang. Unfortunately, Lang is where you're going to split, either going through town or the back way. You see, it's just a rainy, dreary day for us, which is pretty typical. Try to come up with kind of a Conrail-esque horn. One of the closest ones I could pick out of the group. So it's not perfect, but it's okay. It does all right. We did catch a lot of Conrail power back then. 2002, early 2000s, there was a lot of Conrail power floating around. I definitely remember that. Yeah, a few more crossings to be coming around the lane. We'll have to go around there looking out. So yeah, Waycross was a cool place to go in and out of. I enjoyed going down there, but I hated staying in the motel. The motel sucked. You could never get a phone line out of that place. Could never. What I usually like to do, I had just gotten married, so anytime I made it in for a trip, I'd call my wife, I'd call Meredith and let her know that, hey, we had a good trip, let her know how it went, that sort of thing, and never could get a phone line out of that place. It was such a pain trying to get a line out of that place because we didn't have cell phones. You know, there's a few cell phones floating around, but I didn't have one. I had a pager. If you guys remember those, I had a pager back then. I did not have a cell phone. So that is one thing I absolutely remember about Waycross, was what a pain in the butt it was to get a phone line, like get a line out. But you could bet your bottom dollar the crew caller could always get a line in. That was never a problem. It was just getting out. Yeah, let's ease on around here. Have a bad spot. All right, yeah, we got a slow clear, so we're good to go. We are good to go. We are set by Lang. Waycross, the water was always nasty too. To me, it almost kind of reminded me of sulfur in a way. Like it had this like sulfur odor to it, or I don't know. It wasn't very good water. There wasn't a lot of good places that I can remember right there around the motel to eat, like within walking distance. There were guys that like had old junk cars down there that they kept, that they used to drive, that sort of thing. The motel had a car that you could use. But I wound up walking. I think there was a Subway that I used to walk to down there, but it was a little ways away. Like it was a little bit of a walk. So the life of a train crew that you never think about, right? Like when you get to the motel, how do you go somewhere to eat? How do you get around? You know, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of logistics involved with it, right? All right, we're through Lang here. Now we're getting formally on the Fitzgerald sub. I think all that was considered the Fitz, but we're actually really getting on it now. Yeah, I think the whole motel situation down there is probably one of the big reasons I didn't like going down there. Like I said, I enjoyed the trips. It's good trips. I liked the route. Staying in the motel sucked. I didn't care for that. And it wasn't home to me. Like I said, I wasn't very familiar with South Georgia in that area at all. I'd never been down there a lot, period. Even in like my regular life, you know. So it always was really foreign to me, where as the other side, I knew that place like the back of my hand. I don't know, it's just more like home. It was more like home to me, if that makes sense. All right, we got a 30-mile-an-hour diamond board up here, so we'll start counting that off. And hopefully we'll be able to get some miles behind us once we get going. This is getting out of the yard. Getting out of the yard is the hard part. Once you get out of the yard and get going, then you can have a trip. And that's true anywhere. Like getting out of the terminal, Atlanta, Birmingham, Waycross. Always like had a little sigh of relief once you got out of there, because there's so much stuff going on, and to me, like the potential for something happening was always exponentially higher in the terminals than it was out on line of road, right? Like you had more of a chance of, in my book, things going wrong, something happening. So I always like getting out of the terminal, because you didn't seem like you had nearly as many things to think about or be concerned about once you got out. All right, we should have counted off Nickel Street back there. I wasn't thinking about that, but we should be clear of it now. Let's check our bottom real quick and see. Yeah, we're clear of it. So, you know, now would be probably when we call up A Tower and be like, yeah, you can have the, you can have Thomasville, Maine back at whatever time it is, 10 a.m. or whatever. Yeah, 10 a.m. Or they may call you and ask you for it if you haven't like gotten it back to them quick enough and they need it. They may call and ask you for it. Hey, we have Thomasville, Maine back, and you give it back to them. But another thing about Thomasville, Maine, I forgot. Sometimes that track was used as another departure track. An example would be one morning I got called for a Q592 out of Waycross, and it was like a it was like a Q592-10 or something like that. They said it's gonna be on the Thomasville, Maine. And they said, okay, so the yard driver took us out to it. There's a train sitting on Thomasville, Maine. We got on it, but our paperwork didn't match the power. Like nothing matched. And so called A Tower up and said, yeah, we got a lead engine, whatever, and we're supposed to have this. And they came back and they said, you're on the 592-11. 592 is on the Thomasville, Maine, behind the 592-11. So they had two 592s back to back on the Thomasville, Maine, waiting to go north for 2 days worth. So they said, you know what, just take the 11, because there's no way we could take the 10. It was blocked. They said, take the 11. We'll get some more paperwork to you. Is it okay? Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, they did use, in that instance, they did use Thomasville, Maine as a like an extra north forwarding track, and they had two trains parked on it back to back, one behind the other. One thing I've noticed about like people in Waycross in the sim is people ask a lot like about the diamond. Where's Waycross diamond at? Because it's nothing like this nowadays. The way you go in and out of the yard is completely different. The diamond came long after me, after I left the railroad, so I don't know anything about it operationally, though it looks to me it's made it a lot easier to get in and out of the yard is basically the purpose of it, and to get through town for the run-through trains. Because what the run-through trains used to have to do for us, let's say we're on a southbound coal train, we'll say a T-Series Bostwick coal train. We took those a lot down there. You'd basically go through town, and there's a little brick building just below the big passenger depot, and that was called the ice house. So you would take your train and swap at the ice house. So the southbound crew would go on duty at the ice house, and then they would get on the train and take it south from there. So that's where we swapped. Of course, that was eliminated when they did the diamond. And you know, if you think about it, the diamond was purely for it was to add capacity, right? Capacity and operational ease, I guess, if that's a term. All right, we got to clear it Herbertville. So we'll take the distant to Jamestown holdout. So yeah, it was just made things operationally easier to get in and out of the yard, to get through town, that sort of thing. You know, ease of operations to me is not nearly as challenging as the way it was. I mean, that's what added track capacity is for, is to run more trains, make it easier to run more trains. I mean, really, it's like double track versus single track. What's more interesting? What is more challenging? That sort of thing. So the old way is definitely more challenging. It's challenging for the crews because you have more to look out for and keep up with. It's challenging for the dispatcher. He's got a lot more to keep up with, trying to get trains in and out of Waycross. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's that way. I'm glad it's that way. I think it's a lot more to take into consideration and think about, the old way versus new. So, you know, it's all dependent on what you know and what you're familiar with, that sort of thing. All right, so we're going to count off one more time. We can do 30 now, actually. So we can come out and throttle a little bit here. And in a little bit, we'll be able to do 50, and we'll actually get some miles behind us. Because, like I said, it takes you forever to get out of the yard. It is most definitely a process. And this would be one of my favorite stretches on the entire railroad. I don't know what that highway is over there. I can't remember. To the left, it runs parallel, but I always thought it was so cool coming into Waycross this way. All right, here our engine just transitioned. If you heard that click, that was it transitioning, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, it was always a lot of fun. I love this stretch through here. It was pretty neat running alongside the highway. Sometimes cars would pace you and wave and stuff like that, so it's always a lot of fun. There, they're coming up on 30. Alright, kill the bell. So we got Jamestown up here. Yeah, we can turn auto back on as well too. Let's do that real fast because we're already through there. We should have done that already, but we didn't. Jamestown, hold out up here, positive signal. Gotta stop for it. If it's red, you gotta stop. There's no going by that. There's no going by that whatsoever. And it basically, it did what it was called. It would hold trains out of town if they needed to. But though I never held there. Never held there. We'll talk about that some more in a minute up here. Let's see, we're 4,500 feet. Going through the big sag here at Jamestown. Jamestown is known for these big hogbacks. Like, these are your absolute true traditional hogbacks if there is ever one. take a picture of this and put it in the dictionary beside the term, because this is absolutely like the truest form of a hogback you can get. All right, so we can do 50 now. Come out on throttle. Looks like we got it cleared to Jamestown holdouts. So we're good with that. And we'll go ahead and wipe the throttle coming out of the sag, going to number 8. Hit the bell. Start blowing for all these crossings. This is where things start getting really interesting. Alright, everything looks good. She should run pretty good at 1.9 HPT. She's not going to drag like the coal train. .44 was a regular back then. I actually, even though that was a Fitzgerald side train, because it went to Atlanta, so Fitzgerald crews would take it out of Waycross, they would crew change at Fitzgerald, and then they'd run it to Atlanta. I actually recrewed this train a lot, multiple times. They had some kind of agreement where it was like if it went dead at Manchester or north of Manchester, then we would recrew it and take it on into Atlanta instead of them using the Fitzgerald crew. And they did vice versa down south too. So if we had a train that went dead like south of Fitzgerald or Fitzgerald itself, I think they would recrew those as well too. I don't ever remember anyone getting called for a recrew down there like that. But yeah, 544. Usually, if I remember correctly, it had us set out for Manchester. I want to say it did. Yeah, I'm almost positive it did. And then it would have the Manchester set out on the head end, and then it would have a Cincinnati cut, and then it would have the Atlanta cars on the bottom. And so when you would get to Atlanta, you would have to do a few things. Basically what they would have you do is they would have you pull into a receiving yard, receiving track, and they would say cut your Atlanta cars off on the north end of R whatever, rehang your EOT, and then pull down behind the hump tower. And that was in addition to setting out the Manchester cars too, that you had to do earlier, right? So there's a little bit of work involved with that train, and it seemed like it was always going dead in Manchester. Like Fitzgerald crew would get it to Manchester as far as they could get it, and then they would go dead. Sometimes they would do the Manchester cut for you. A lot of times we would have to do it once we took the train. Let's watch our speed. This side is a little bit it's a little bit challenging through here. So yeah, I definitely remember going into Atlanta on this train quite a few times. It wasn't that big of a deal, really. I mean, you could do a lot worse, right? I mean, basically cutting your Atlanta cars off and rehanging the EOT wasn't that hard. All right, let's grab some air because we are most definitely going to need some air going into the Satilla River here. Grab the throttle a little bit more. Got them bailed off. Which may run a little fast on us down here, but it'll be all right. Like I said, a few mile an hour, not a big deal. Going over to Satilla right here, pretty nice with the sandy beach. Remember Satilla River? Remember people down there fishing and having all kind of fun and women sunbathing and all that kind of stuff. Satilla River could be kind of interesting at times, for sure. Yeah, let's come out on the throttle. Knock brakes off. We should be good. We went ahead and got 10, so we shouldn't have to worry about stuck brakes. It's going to be flat through here, and then we'll climb out a little bit And then there will be another sag and then another little climb into Bowling. And I think it crests just south of Bowling. And then pretty flat through Bowling all the way to Sessoms. I think there's a pretty good sag. Like that's the first really big sag is just north of Sessoms as best I can remember. All right, come about 595 intermediates. Got it clear. This definitely brings back memories. This, like, doing these videos for you guys, and I really do appreciate all the comments and the feedback you guys have given me and that you're enjoying it. It brings back a lot of memories, and it's had me thinking about things that I haven't thought about in 20 years. And seriously, it's definitely brought back a lot of memories. I am by no means an expert. I can give you a little insight as to what it was kind of like as best as I can remember, but it's been a long time. It's kind of hard to believe that it's been that long. This has been 20 years. In a way, it feels like ages, and then other times it seems like just yesterday, but... All right, coming down through the big sag here. I remember this road up here. What was this road called up here? I can't recall it. We'll see it in a minute. Minshew. Johnny Minshew Road? Yeah, Johnny Minshew Road. There you go. All right. Nice sag to do some stretch braking, especially southbound. Oh no, we may... I don't think we're going to need to grab some air going north. We might need to. I think we're good. We're just going to stick with it. Or a 50-mile-an-hour train. Most everything I remember taking on the Fitz was 50-mile-an-hour trains. Unless it was an intermodal or an auto rack, something like that. I remember having some 40-mile-an-hour coal trains. Some of them, they would get so heavy up to a certain point, they would be 40-mile-an-hour, and that really sucked. That really, really sucked to have a 40-mile-an-hour coal train on the Fitzgerald sub. I definitely remembered that. Oh, I hated that. On the Lineville side wasn't that big of a deal because that wasn't a fast railroad anyway. Like, you doing good if you could average 35 mile an hour on that railroad, but on the Fitz, the 40 mile an hour trains suck. They really just did. You're like, oh, man, I can't remember what the weight, but I want to say once they started getting up around 13,000 tons, and they would be maybe a 40 mile an hour train, something like that. All right, so we're by the big sag at Johnny Minshew. We'll climb up into to Bowling. It's showing 0.62 here. I think we crest just a little bit south of Bowling, and it's pretty flat. Pretty flat, maybe a little downhill to Sessoms, but I think mostly flat. Can't remember. I hadn't even looked at the profile on this. I couldn't even tell you, but. Alright, Dixie Union Road. Alright, we keep chugging along, going to Bowling. Bowling was a place I remember for southbounds. That was a place you would sit and wait. You could have the best trip ever going to Waycross, but they could ruin it for you at Bowling. Literally, they could ruin your entire trip at Bowling because they would stick you in the hole there and have you waiting on trains coming out of Waycross, and usually it was like fleets of trains. It was never just one. It was usually 2 or 3 at a time. Either run-throughs going through town or trains coming out of the yard, and you guys saw like how time involved that is getting out of the yard. So yeah, you could sit at bowling for a while. I've done that, and they used to stack trains in there too. I think one of the last times, I remember taking a military train in there one time behind another one and like having to sit there forever. And like I said, I would always get off and walk. There's that little dirt road that ran alongside the tracks. I would get off the train and walk up and down it, try to pass the time. All right, coming up to Haywood. Of course, on the notation there, it says call A tower southbound. Yeah, that's where you're supposed to call A tower. Sometimes radio signal was a little weak right there, so you could start trying to call it Haywood. What do we got here? We've got an approach medium. Nice. Okay, so we're going in at bowling, I guess. Yeah, I guess we're going into bowling to meet someone. Yeah, radio reception was a little spotty right there. So sometimes you kind of wait. You could start there or start calling a little further south. But yeah, you would call them and tell them your train and that you're heading Waycross, and they would clear you on to Waycross. They'd say come on to Waycross, and then you could go by, there was a place, and I didn't point it out. I wish I had. Okay, so you got the Jamestown holdout. That was a positive signal, but just north of that, there was a road crossing. It's called like Schoolhouse Road Crossing or something like that. If they didn't tell you to come on the Waycross, you could not pass that road. I don't care if you had a clear signal or an approach, whatever. You could not pass that road. You could not pass Schoolhouse Road Crossing. So, yeah, you had to get permission before you could pass that. So that's why you would call them at Haywood. Like, I think they would say, like, come on to Waycross, and then as you got closer, they may call you up and give you yarding instructions or something like that. But trying to remember. Yeah, I think that's how that went down. You know, I say I don't remember them telling us how that they're going to back us into the yard that day, but they could have very well have. They could have when they gave us yarding instructions. They could have told us we're going through town. All right, we'll continue on. Don't go in at bowling. I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting this meet. This is another session that I set up, but it's been like a few weeks back. Question is, are we going in the siding or are we going down the main? Get a little air. With 25-mile-an-hour siding, of course. Oh, I saw this 50 right here on this switch was really weird for a diamond board. There, we'll knock them off. What do we got? We've got an approach, so we're going to go down the main. Okay, that's fine. We can do that. We'll call the dispatcher up in a minute and annoy him. Ask him what's going on. In all reality, I hardly ever call the dispatcher. I just left him alone. You know, unless like the reason for you stopping just wasn't obvious whatsoever, right? Like you just had no clue why you were stopping. Then you would, but like you had a pretty dang good idea, at least we did, as far as like what you were doing and who you were meeting and when you were going to meet them, who was out there, that sort of thing. Like I literally, before I would leave, I would print out lineups. I would print out crews that were in the motel. Like I always had really good situational awareness as far as who was out there and who was doing what. So You kind of had an idea. You didn't really need to call a dispatcher. I got to approach South Bowling. We'll go down to Main here. Meeting someone. I don't know. It's going to be a surprise. Yeah, just leave him alone. You know, if you want to annoy the dispatcher and get him on your bad side, keep calling him up and pestering him about things, you know. Of course, sometimes they would call you up and be like, hey, 544 gonna hold you on the Main for 1 or 2 at Bowling, you know, that sort of thing. But otherwise, I try to leave him alone. There's a little dirt road over there on the left. I walked that thing plenty of times. Plenty of times on that dirt road. Let's see, we got 4843. He's out there. Yeah, I'm really kind of surprised that we're meeting someone at Bowling. I thought it would have been a little further north. Maybe drug our feet getting out of the yard a little bit there. All right, we'll ease on down here and stop. We'll get us a good set so we don't get stuck brakes. I do remember having stuck brakes coming out of Waycross. I absolutely do. I remember having a train with stuck brakes. 684, we had stuck brakes one day. Look back, in about probably 10 or 15 deep in a big broad curve, one of those curves back there, we had all kind of smoke coming off a car and definitely had stuck brakes. Like, there was no doubt about that. And what we did, of course, and I know I've talked about this in another video, look back, saw the smoke, told the engineer, said, I think we got stuck brakes. He looked in the next curve, he saw it, so he just drew the brakes down really tight and knocked them off, and that resolved the issue. Like, it wasn't a problem then. Sometimes you would get a call from another train that you were meeting or someone and say, hey, you got stuck brakes, you know, draw them down tight. That sort of thing. I don't remember getting caught by a hot box for stuck brakes. Yeah, I don't remember that. Okay, so we're sitting here at Bowling, we're waiting on a train. Let's go ahead and knock the big brake off. Let the locomotive brake will hold us here. That way they can be charged up, and then when we get light, we can blast off and go. Fill our wipers too, we don't need those. There we go. Alright guys, I guess we'll sit here for a bit and wait, hopefully not too terribly long. Alright, here's our AI train we're meeting. It's gonna be an ace. Looks like it's a coal train. Yeah, that's gonna be a coal train. 2 aces on the head end. I use aces because that's the best ace. That's like the only AC power we've got. That's why I said AC 400s would be super nice to have. But aces, like, that's all we got. So you have to kind of make do, right? Let's go up here and look and see. Who is this going to be? Yeah, OUCX is going to be Stanton coal train. Another Stanton coal train. Now we can pull up the board and see who is this. N14010. So we're meeting the N140 to Stanton. Nice. We'll watch them by. Some mighty clean hoppers. They look nice though, don't they? They look very nice. They're just very clean. Sometimes those hoppers are so dusty you can't read anything on them unless they bust out the brushes and they clean like one little spot. You see that every once in a while. They'll have the really clean spots where you can read the reporting marks and stuff. But nice. N140, old school, no DPU and all that stuff. Just 2 aces on the head end. All right, there's the bottom coming in. We'll watch them by. Hopefully we can blast off after this. I hope so. Ready to go. If he's got his marker. All right, N140 train looks good. Marker's hanging. He's winking and blinking. Let's go ahead and get on our power here. Get ready to get out of here. Hopefully we can go. There we go. Got our light. Nice. We already released our big brake, so we don't have to worry about that. Release our independent. We should be good to go. Not very heavy, so we won't even bother with sand, really. We'll be all right. Everything's looking good. EOT's moving. So we'll probably take this guy to Sessoms, just a little bit north of Sessoms, maybe Nichols or something like that, and then we'll call it a day. We'll pick up from there. We'll probably break this up into 2 trips. It's taken us so long to get out of the yard. It's gonna be kind of a long video. All right, Q544 has clear North Bowling. Continue on to Sessoms. We'll go by Beach in a bit. I've got a story about Beach for you guys. Pretty cool. Their view situated just a little bit. There we go. So I think it's predominantly flat through here. It undulates, but nothing major. It may go downhill a little bit towards Sessoms. I'm trying to remember this crossing here. There we go. All right, yeah, it may kind of go downhill a little bit. I'd have to go back and look. It's been a while. I haven't looked, so but I think it's mostly flat. I do remember the big sag, the big hogback just north of Sessoms, so that's like the first big one we really need to worry about, but otherwise we should be good to go. Let's go to number 8. All right, north out of Bowling. Straight as an arrow, flat as a pancake, right? Yeah, 0.04, so pretty much flat. The line from Sessoms to Waycross, Sessoms to Waycross, actually at one time was a branch line. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, that was considered a branch line. It was light rail. There was no ballast. It was literally just on the sand. The main line went from Sessoms through Alma and that way to Brunswick, and the line to Waycross was literally just a branch. It wasn't even considered part of their main line. We're talking about early 1900s. Yeah, they were good. Come out of the Bowling DD here. We got stuck brakes. We'll find out. 606.0. All right, got to clear a beach. All right, signal at beach. Story time. I think it was beach or the distant to Sessoms. I think it was beach. I got called out of Waycross one morning, like 7 a.m. for a 684 or 592. It was one of those 2 trains because it seemed like I was all the time getting those out of Waycross. It was a really bad stormy morning. It was the sky looked so bad. The clouds were so dark and just hanging really low. There was tornado warnings. Like it was really odd for a morning that early because like you don't hear of a lot of tornado warnings early, like in the morning like that. So we leave out and I think it was here because I remember seeing the signal in the distance. It was a spot where you could see it for a long way, so it could have been very well beach. It wasn't raining. It wasn't really doing anything. It wasn't. I don't remember it being windy. It was just really dark, nasty looking sky, and I think there's some lightning off in the distance. And We're rolling along, and all of a sudden, there's this flash, this bright flash, and a pop, and our train goes into emergency. We were on some kind of locomotive that had displays. I remember that.
Equipment.
Let's go over this, DD.
Detector, milepost 606.0. No defect. Total axle 386.
All right, we're good. So we had this pop, this flash, this pop. The train goes into emergency. We have alarm bells going off. I remember the displays. It may have been it was some kind of locomotive with a display. So it could have been like it could have very well been an AC 4400. Honestly, like it had one on the conductor side too, or an AC 6000 or something like that. The display went black. Like, it literally just went black. We went into emergency. I can't remember if the locomotive shut down. I don't think it did. I don't think it did. But we went into emergency. The displays went black. I remember the signal in front of us, Beach, I think it was Beach that we're looking at, went red. And we're rolling to a stop, and then I remember seeing the signal reline itself, like then it went back to an approach, and then it went to a clear. And we rolled to a stop, and I want to say the displays came back up on their own. I don't remember us doing anything, but I could be wrong on that. I think it was almost like a reboot in a way, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm really fuzzy on that, but I remember us coming to a stop. I remember the displays coming back up. I don't know if we brought it back up or if it did it on its own, but yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if we were like hit by lightning, if lightning hit around the tracks, if it was close on the. I don't know, but it was definitely. It was something lightning related. We didn't feel anything. I didn't feel a thing. But I do remember it was just a really, really loud pop or snap, and then like all hell broke loose at that point. And so we came to a stop. We got everything situated and good to go, and then we went on about our business. That was basically it. Like it was the weirdest thing ever. So I don't know. I don't know what happened on that. I guess I'll leave it to you guys. But I want to say they did wind up having a tornado that morning. I want to say there's a tornado over around Alma to the east of Sessoms. So it was a pretty bad morning. It was pretty nasty. That's for sure. All right, we carry on. Trying to see what we got up here. And I can't tell to save my life. I can't tell what that is. Yeah, I sure can't. We'll see when we get up there. Yeah, so anyway, like I said, there was a branch between Sessoms and Waycross. The main line was to Brunswick because Atlanta, Birmingham, and Atlantic was all about building a line from Brunswick, Georgia on the coast to Birmingham and Atlanta. So that was considered their actual artery or their main line. It looks like, do we have an approach or a stop? That almost looks like a stop, guys. What is going on with that? I can't tell. That should be the, that's the distant. The distant to Sessoms, it should be, right? I think so. We'll see. We could very well have an approach. It's just looking red. You can tell a little bit. Okay, yeah, it is an approach. It just looked red. That's true to life for sure. I remember us having sub signals that were really hard to distinguish between an approach and a stop. Like, definitely, there was one in Birmingham that was really tough. I think it was at 27th Street was the one that was really, really super hard to tell. All right, we'll keep rolling with it. All right, yeah, we got approach on distant to Sessoms. So it looks like we're going to be going in again. We're going to be going in the hole again to meet someone else. All All right, now it's coming out of the throttle. Oh, yeah, number 2? Yeah, that'd be all right. We'll say number 2 for now. It's pretty flat. And it's going to be a control siding, so we'll go in on a restricting. Those, to me, are like always tough sidings to get into. I mean, we could use dynamics. That would probably be a good call for us. Sometimes it's kind of tricky using air to go in those because you have to slow down so slow, and then like you have to hang on to the air and all that stuff. Go ahead and set up dynamics. We'll just kind of ease around there to it. Go to B2. Start gathering up the slack. I still may have to grab a little air on top of it. The signal should just be right up there. This fog or this haze isn't helping us at all. What do we got? Looks like we got a restricting in. You can't really see it that good, but yeah, I'd really just rather, in this instance, I'd kind of like to go with the dynamics if we can. There we go. Yeah, she's coming down really fast. Yeah, never mind. Our power's got some good dynamics today, man. That really, we poured it on. Yeah, it's just sometimes it's kind of tricky with air. Going in these sidings with the restricting. Some of those deals where you can make your train squat really easy going in if you're not careful. It looks like... Nice, yeah, our other train's already up there waiting, so we should just be able to go in and out. There, we'll have to pull on it. Yeah, those dynamics slowed us up a lot more than what I thought they would, man. Those are some good dynamics. It's like either you have dynamics that you feel like they're not doing anything at all for you whatsoever. It's like, are they even working? Like, do we even have dynamics? And then other times it's like they feel like they're going to stand you on your nose. That was one of the things I liked about the AC 4400s. They always seemed like they had really good, I always call them tight dynamics. Like they're really tight. Like they would really slow you down a lot. Let's give a little power drag in there. Oh, nice. He dimmed for us. AI dimmed. Not that much of a thing during the day, though. Some guys did, some guys didn't. I was never put off by someone not dimming during the daytime. I don't remember that being a thing. Night was a different story. Alright, CSXQ 544 got a restricted signal south Sessoms. What is our engine number? I can't even remember. 6475. 6475 north out. Alright. Yeah, I wish I could renumber that. I need to renumber these sometime. Take them out of the Conrail. Take them out of the Conrail numbering. Who are we meeting here? Who's this going to be? I think this is an empty phosphate train. I can't remember the symbol. We'll look at it in a second, but I think this is empty phosphate. Alright, let's slow down going around this curve here. nice. We got 2-9s and an SP unit. Cool. Something to change it up a little bit. That's definitely something we saw a lot back in the day. There was all kind of Renorex in foreign power. Lots and lots of foreign power. The trains that I can remember having 4 power as a leader, the best one I ever remember having was a Santa Fe GP50 on a piggyback. We had a Santa Fe GP50 in the lead. That was Q179 to Jacksonville, and we had I think it was a Spartan Cab -8 that was second out. That's all we had. Some of the other power, another one on 179 I remember having was a Montana Rail Link SD45-2. We had that as power. I remember Sioux Line, the white and red, like the predominantly white, not the newer scheme that they had later on, it was solid red, but the white and red SD60s on a molten sulfur train. What else? What else did we have? UP power. I remember getting Spartan Cab -8s on the UP. I'm trying to think, what other power did we have? Man, the Burlington Northern SD70 MACs, before they were B&SF, what was that green and like a cream color scheme that they had? What was that, like the Grinstein scheme or whatever they called it? I had one of those one time. And then more Renorex than I could ever shake a stick at. Like, the one Renorec I remember that really kind of stood out in my mind was we had one of those, it was an MPI, like a rebuilt SD45 Morrison Knudsen, that blue with like the silver or the gold stripes, I guess. We had one of those as a leader on 592, and I'll never forget that because it was on Manchester Railroad Days that weekend, and we had that as a leader on 592. And I remember I had to do some switching in the yard there at Manchester. I had to sit out the Manchester cut, and there were several guys there rail fanning for the weekend, and they came down trackside to make pictures of that lead engine. So there's some people out there somewhere that's got pictures of me switching these cars out with that lead engine. There's video of it and still pictures. I've never seen them though, unfortunately, but all right, let's carry on. So yeah, lots of cool power. Another good consist I remember having was 3 of the silver and green FURX SD42s. Had a trio of them one time. And I'm trying, gosh, there's so many of them, it's hard to, it's like, I'm trying to remember just the ones that stand out. It's hard to remember sometimes, there's so much. But yeah, it was a good time. You never knew what you're going to get, and that's one thing I really loved about railroading, was it was different every day. Different trains, different power. I loved getting all the different power. For the most part, sometimes it was just junk. You know, sometimes it'd be an instance where you pull up to your train, you see it sitting there, and you're like, "Oh man, we've got good power today, awesome." Or other times you pull up to your train and you're like, "Where did they dig that hunk of junk up from?" Seriously, like, this is going to be a bad trip. You never knew. It was always interesting, and we got a medium clear out of the siding, so we're good to go. We may just go ahead and stop here, guys. We may just go ahead and stop here and call it. We're an hour and 30 minutes into it. I'm gonna try to edit this back as much as I can, but we may just go ahead and stop here since it's a good spot to stop. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. Let's just grab some air. We've got a signal out, but we're just going to grab some air and end it right here. Bail them off. It's just taking way longer to get out of the yard, and that's, like I said, that's par for the course. There you go. She should come to a pretty nice stop here. And then we'll pick up our next video. We'll just finish it out to we'll finish it out to Fitzgerald. It should be a good trip after that. Yeah, let's get some more air. There we go. Nice stop. We'll set the independent, come out of the throttle, center reverser, and release the big brake. And we should be good. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Hope y'all enjoyed. Love all of you, and we'll catch you on the rails headed to Fitzgerald next time. Peace.